Bongiwe Gambu is the spokesperson for the Gauteng MEC for Infrastructure Development. She joins us via Zoom. Thanks so much for your time on SABC News. Just tell us what exactly happened at that school.
What is reported to have happened, and good afternoon, Zinga, and to your viewers at home, is that there was mobilization within the community, which started with some of our officials being held hostage. And then after that, there was then the torching and destruction of the principal's office, as well as the security guard's place of work. And later in the evening, they moved to the grade R classrooms that they set alight. And we are now sitting with that damage, unfortunately.
What's going to happen in terms of repairing that school? Talk us through what the Public Finance Management Act says about what you can do about rebuilding that school or making sure that it's there for pupils to use.
Thank you very much for that question, and in particular reference to the Public Finance Management Act, which is very clear about budgeting as well as scoping. And as far as the project that we are going to tender for, which is in September, we are going to ask for approval for us to go to advertise the tender. We cannot go outside the scope, and we cannot chop and change and make sure that we replace what was torched last night. The Gauteng Department of Education has been very clear over the years that whenever intentional destruction and torching of infrastructure and facilities that are for the community happens, then the department will not replace those. And I just also confirmed this very issue before I came on air, just to find out whether the Gauteng Department of Education is still adamant that any property, facilities, and infrastructure that is intentionally destroyed by our communities and our community members will not be replaced. And that is the case this time. So we will not move outside the scope for the project of replacing the school, which will start taking place later in the year.
All right. There have been concerns from residents, though, that there has been promises to develop the school and it's not been developed. And perhaps that's one of the ways that they're raising their anger. So speak to me about if that's true, one, and two, why is it taking so long to develop a school?
Number one, the process of developing or planning also goes back to what you asked earlier about the Public Finance Management Act. We only move at the behest and the instruction of our client departments. And in this case, of course, it is the Gauteng Department of Education. Once they have have had the approval of a budget from Gauteng Treasury. 2, they have come to us with a scope. 3, we start the process, and it's a very long and arduous process as far as Public Finance Management Act is concerned, but also the design of such a project is concerned. So every step of the way needs to be accounted for. And even when it looks like there is silence on our part, there is work that has been done. And already we have had the approval of the design of the school, as well as the fire engineering, as well as the roads and roads plans that had to be approved by the relevant structures, including the fact that we work within a municipality. So there is also that interdependence that has to be taken into place. And once that has happened, Nzika, we then go into the very same community of Etwatwa in this case, and we say, this project is coming. This is what it means. This is how you can get involved as an ordinary person who has skills and labor to offer the project, as well as a small business within that community who can then partner with a contractor as a subcontractor to make sure that you participate in the project and in the delivery of the school.
Bongiwe, you spoke about the challenges and how long it takes your department to build schools because you have to wait for clients, which is the Gauteng Department of Education. 100 more schools need to be built, according to an interview that Banyaza Lesufi did in Gauteng. If it's taking this long and people are struggling with placements and there's a lot of frustration and anger by community members, Are you having discussions about what can be done to make this process less arduous so that the needs of people living in these communities can be met?
Thank you very much for that question. I am doing this interview at one of our buildings where we are going through all the projects that are at a stage where they can go out on tender. And there's already a couple of them, in fact, more than 20 of them, that I know for sure that we have received and we have received scope for. However, we also need to understand that we cannot circumvent the Public Finance Management Act. We cannot do that because the very same moment that we start doing so, we find ourselves in contravention of the law and find ourselves in commission one or two or the other and have to be hauled over the coals with the legislature for having circumvented some of the very clear legislation that govern our processes as a department, but also as Gauteng provincial government. We have to make sure that even with the ideals that we have and the big plans that we have, we make sure that we work as speedily as possible without breaking the very same legislation that is meant to take care of and curtail and also deal with issues of corruption within the system. But lastly, Nzinga, we have also started working closely together with the municipalities that we are building in, so that once we start a project, they are in anticipation of certain things that they will receive from us as a department, so that there isn't too much of a toing and froing, because there are these interdependencies that we need to also take into consideration. The metro needs to approve certain things, a municipality needs to approve certain things, and those also take time. But with our IGR and our stakeholder engagement, we have also speeded up that process and made it even easier through our MEC and the MMCs in those municipalities, that the teams start working together from planning stages, so that by the time we break ground on a project, we all are on the same page and every part of that team or every member of that team is aware of what's expected from them.
Bongiwe Gambu, the spokesperson for the Gauteng MEC for Infrastructure Development, joining us there. Thanks so much for your time on SABC News.